Welcome to another episode of the Daily Apple Clinic podcast, The Truth About Health. I'm your host, Paul Reynolds, and today we're diving deep into a topic that touches every single one of us, what health and well-being truly means. Our goal is always to have an open, honest conversation about healthcare, to uncover the truths that might not always be easy to hear, and to help you, our listeners, live longer, happier, and healthier lives. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Suneel Dhand. Dr. Dhand is a physician, author, YouTuber, health coach, and wellness advocate who has spent over a decade helping people live their best and healthiest lives. He's not just a doctor, he's a thinker, a disruptor, and someone who's passionate about challenging the norms of the healthcare industry. He's written books, created supplements, developed weight control programs, and has a treasure trove of insights to share. His motto: helping people live their best and healthiest lives because life is short. We're going to explore some big questions today, the kind of questions that spark debate, challenge conventional wisdom, and hopefully make you think differently about your health. And because life is too short to take ourselves too seriously, we'll keep things fun and throw in a few unexpected questions to keep things interesting. So let's get started. Hi, Dr. Dhand. Great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Paul, it's an honor to join you. Great to be here. What an introduction. I appreciate it. Let's have a fruitful discussion that's going to help a lot of people.
Fingers crossed. We're all about it. I'm just going to jump in, set the stage a little bit. Let's talk about healthcare in general and maybe some of your journey. You often talk about helping people live their best lives because life is short. What was the moment or experience that made you realize just how short life can be?
Well, I think that this hits most people who go into medicine quite quickly and experience life and then work on the medical wards. And you see just how fragile life is and how health truly is the only thing that matters. I mean, everybody gets caught up in their day-to-day lives. Everybody's very busy, but it's only when we lose our health or a family member loses their health that we realize how that was the basic foundational principle of everything. Without
Mm,
health, you can't do anything. And it is the number one and should be the number one priority for everybody out there. So I realized
mm,
this very quickly as a medical student and working on the medical floors. And alas, especially after I became an attending doctor, I realized how people's decline in health that I was seeing was invariably reversible and preventable. And that really struck
mm,
a chord and encouraged me to blog about it, write about it, get into this space. During the pandemic, everything kind of went to the next level as well. And that's when I really became more prominent on social media platforms. But everything I do is basically about people living their best life, which in my opinion is usually a drug-free life, if at all it
mm.
can happen that way.
Right. And prescribed drugs specifically,
Right. Yeah.
in addition to those other types of drugs. So your career spans clinical work, YouTube, writing. So what's the thread that ties all these pursuits together for you?
The thread is quite simply wanting everybody to be as healthy, both physically and mentally, as possible,
Mm,
and understanding that the system around them and that sadly the people who lead many of the institutions, hopefully there's change now, but certainly as far
mm,
as things have been for the last 20 years, and certainly the commercial interests are always trying to push you in the wrong direction. And it's a
mm,
constant fight every day because quite literally, the second you scroll your phone, the second you step out of your house, you will be hit with a barrage of
mm,
either information or influence, which is trying to make you physically and mentally sick. Because
mm,
once you are sick and you're plugged into the medical industrial complex, you become a very profitable thing, sadly, for a lot of forces out there. And that may sound like a conspiracy theory to some, but it's absolutely the truth. Our entire system incentivizes people to be sick because that is how
mm.
the medical industry sadly generates money. So I want everybody
Right.
to realize that. And everything I do, 99% of everything I do is geared towards waking people up and getting them to take charge of their health and not think that their solution to problems lies in a doctor's office or in a pill or in an injection.
Mm. So the solution is not anything, well, you're gonna help them, but the goal is for them to take responsibility, take charge of those different ways that they can change their own lives. And do you give them some specific information? How do you get them moving in the right direction?
So typically by the time people come to me, they already
Mm,
are on this journey to
mhm,
different degrees. They might be just starting it or well into it, and they want to
mm,
optimize their metabolic health. So as far
mm,
as my practice goes outside of the hospital and everything I do online, to be fair, I mean, usually I'm talking to people who have already started the journey. They're not at complete
yeah,
zero and unaware that they need to change. But
mm,
through a lot of my message, I'm trying to nudge people in this direction as well.
mm, right. Back to some of the big picture stuff. So you've worked in various healthcare settings. I think you still float back and forth between UK and the US, yes?
Yeah, I don't work
And
in the UK clinically though, only in the
okay,
US.
okay. So what's one thing the US healthcare system could learn from other countries?
Well, many things. I mean,
Yeah.
let's not
Yeah.
throw the
Pick a
baby out
few, yeah.
with the bathwater. There are some things which are good about the US, astonishing
Sure.
level emergency care. We are excellent
Mm,
at fixing acute problems quickly at a level and at a speed at which they won't be done anywhere else. Like if you break your bone or you have sepsis or you get admitted to the intensive care unit, we're really
mm,
good at fixing those problems quickly. It's
mhm,
chronic disease management where we completely fall down. So if
mm,
somebody is suffering, for instance, from diabetes, heart disease, other inflammatory diseases, we are very much focused on getting them on a treadmill of escalating doses of medications, pills, injections. Whereas in many other countries, there'd be a much more root cause approach and they would be much more
mm,
conservative with prescribing the big gun medication. So the main thing I would think the US system could learn from other countries is to really focus on root causes, have a very strong primary care system because it's basically non-existent. I know that's something that you are courageously and admirably working on.
mm.
But it's really poor in the United States. We are good at everything. We are good at few things rather, except for acute care management here.
Mm. How do we get better at that? It just begs that question. What do we do? How can we do that better?
Yeah, and I don't mean to sound like a pessimist completely. I'm
Yeah.
actually an optimistic person for everybody
Mm,
watching, but I'm also a realist. And the problem that we have in the US is that there are far too many competing interests. We've got
mm,
insurance companies, we've got big pharma, we've got the physician societies who are absolutely terrible. I say that as a doctor,
mm,
they're a huge impediment to improving the system. We've got the medical associations, the licensing authorities, hospital
mm,
associations. Everybody has a competing interest here, and
mm,
everybody wants to make as much money as possible for themselves. So my own opinion in the US is that change in such a big country, which is so diverse, it is going to be impossible to get a central system, I would say, that would rapidly improve the situation. We'll probably see change more at a local level. Certain states will start to do it better than others. And I think people like yourself who are trying to work outside of the system, that
mm,
may sound very odd to some people, but I actually think our best hope for change is from doctors and medical practitioners who work outside the system and real
mm,
and people slowly realizing that that's the way to go. Because as soon as you're plugged into the system, it's very difficult to go in any other direction apart from the one of escalating medicines, investigations, etc. Individual doctors will set up their own practices whether that's direct pay or another model. I see that as the way forward for the
mm,
future. Individual doctors
mm,
and nurse practitioners and PAs.
mm, mm. Yeah, I absolutely have to agree with you. The system is designed to bring doctors in from day one. It's designed to to teach them the system, show them how to navigate the system, how to use that system to their benefit as well as to their patients' benefits, hopefully. And I my experience was that once you're in it, you're really sucked into it. The objective there is to keep you in that system, and I think you had a one-liner in there somewhere. It really is about how money is being made, and there's this powerful profit motive that exists within the system that me personally, I don't think it should be there. I don't think we as human beings should be as concerned about money simply because money is just it's just oil in the machine. We're not taking it with us. What's the point
I
here?
completely agree.
What are you trying to do?
Absolutely. Money is the problem is that, and I've
Yeah.
realized this during the pandemic. It's
Mm,
great to have these idealistic viewpoints, Paul, absolutely. But
mm,
when you're fighting human nature as well, it's very
right.
difficult. So this has been an issue throughout history where as soon as money gets involved, everything changes. So
Right.
people can do their best at an individual level, and then the system, if it's going to implode, eventually will. I have
Mm,
no problem with people earning an honest living, and certainly they can do well financially if they're working honestly.
right.
When we're talking
Sure.
about these conflicts of interest and a system which is actually making people sick, that's where
Mm.
the problem arises.
Do you think that's a pretty big misconception that people have nowadays, that money is not a huge motivation in terms of I mean, this is a $5 trillion a year
Oh, yeah, yeah.
industry.
Oh, I think it's
Yeah.
involved at every level. I mean, doctors are the
Mm,
worst players here. I mean, the sad thing is in the US now, I didn't train in the US, but I know that
mm,
doctors here who I work around every day graduate hundreds of thousands, sometimes $1 million+ in debt. And they're
mm.
essentially in a state
Wow.
of servitude then. I mean, how is a doctor that
Yes.
is in that type of debt
How do you
going to
get out?
step away or speak
Mm,
up? They won't do it
mm.
because their entire livelihood will go. They'll become bankrupt. And then you
Right.
have this vicious circle. A doctor enters practice and thinks, well, I have to pay off all this debt. I must earn as much
Mm,
money as possible. And doctors' salaries have to go up accordingly with inflation and everything else. Uh,
mm,
and I don't think necessarily that clinicians' salaries are a big part of the problem here. I think a bigger problem is that every single interest, whether it's a physician society or a hospital association or insurance, is looking out for themselves and everything is siloed and the patient
mm,
comes a distant second. So it's really difficult when you're dealing with a system like that to improve the whole system. There are little
mm,
things we could do that would make a huge difference. If I may offer a few prescriptions here that I think would change things overnight, you could
mm.
ban physician societies from taking anything more than $100 a year. I really mean that. $100 a year from a pharmaceutical company. If you did
Mm.
that, you would be big, big change overnight. They would completely change their whole mentality. Do the
Right.
same with medical journals as well. Right now, they're littered
Mm,
with pharma ads. Ban big pharma advertising on TV. The
mm,
USA and New Zealand, the four countries, are the only countries that
mm.
allow that. It doesn't happen in Europe. I mean, I don't know what it's like in your
Right.
part of the world, but here sometimes if you're watching cable TV and the ads come on, every single ad is for pharma, and that wasn't the case
Right.
20 years ago. Like it's
Mm,
gone completely out of control. So that
right.
industry needs to be reined in first, big pharma, and then there's other things you could do individually to incentivize wellness. You could at the government level, let me put this out there. You could give
Mm.
people, and this might sound ridiculous, but I think it would work. You could give people a tax incentive if they have a normal BMI every year. Get them
Sure.
measured. Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, of course you'll get loads of arguments and people saying that's
Oh,
unfair.
yeah.
Well, think about all of the bad
Mhm.
things that we incentivize. Why
Mm.
not incentivize a good behavior?
Right. And there are countries that actually do that. I'm guessing you're aware of it in some places where you actually, you are fined if you don't, uh, maintain a BMI. And it's probably not a terrible idea.
What
Some
countries are they? I
businesses
looked that
I
up.
my
Uh,
understanding is Japan does this,
oh, wow.
that they're
Okay.
yeah, and so I'm very I think that's just the that's part of that basic healthy standard that we really should be talking about. There are people who will say, "It's not BMI, it's waist circumference. It's some sort of metabolic obesity. It's this other thing." But I think it's a great marker, and it doesn't mean that it has to be the end all, but it certainly is, some information. that we can use to create a picture of any individual and say, hey, could you be doing better? Are there some things that are happening in your life that we need to talk about? And how do we help you think about who you are and where you're heading and whether or not your health is going to be an impediment to your best and highest purposes, and whether or not it's going to cost other people because
Yeah.
we're assuming responsibility for your health. And those are all fair questions, I think. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was saying I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so pharma's influence then, I guess, is, I mean, we see it in our clinics, in our offices. They're just banging on the door all the time if they can get in, and suggesting that we do all kinds of very expensive medications or procedures, treatments, and then they're apparently advertising. Well, they advertise directly to consumers, and they advertise to us in different ways. And then additionally, they're marketing, if you will, through Congress, through
Sure.
legislation, and then through these large organizations that represent many physicians and healthcare providers. And so, again, it's just the fact that they have been able to make a lot of money and spend it in places that allow them to make more. I guess. Tell me if I'm off base here.
No, absolutely. What you say is completely
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. So, so with all this conflicting health advice out there, how can people know what's real and what's marketing?
Are you referring to products or other
Could
items?
could be anything in terms of maybe what pharma feeds us or
Yeah.
what people see even on the internet. Maybe I know that's a much bigger question. There's a lot of junk
Yeah.
out there. What do you
Oh,
think?
yeah, absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, the reality of the world is a lot of what we see is marketing. People
Mm,
make a living selling things.
mm,
You have to know the difference between what is real, what is going to be good for you, and what's not going to be good for you. So I would urge
mm,
health skepticism, no matter
mm,
who it is. Have that
neat.
skepticism.
Mm,
Do your own research, and I actually do believe, Paul, that most people have a good gut instinct when they're being fed nonsense and they know that something doesn't sound right. I
right.
would say that's intrinsic, probably a
Mm,
survival mechanism in humans to kind of know if
mm,
something's quite right.
mm,
So yeah, get as many opinions as you can, do your own research, and
mm,
you rarely go wrong with foundational principles. I'll give you an
mm,
example with food, for instance. The truth is 80 to 90% of what's in a grocery store is complete and utter trash. Anything package which has three or more ingredients, especially
mm,
ingredients you don't recognize, you're far better off
mm,
staying away from them. Your body, your gut was not built for
mm,
those products. They are
mm,
industrial concoctions and they're going to make you
mm,
inflate and more prone to illnesses. So eat real
mm,
food. You can't go wrong with a
mm,
protein and two vegetables for a meal. Um, bread,
mm,
unfortunately, is one of the most heavily processed foods these days. People eat
mm,
way too many carbs, sugars, processed foods. We can talk about that. That's a whole other discussion. But
mm,
people probably know that the healthier foods are the pure foods without
mm.
ingredients and cooked from scratch. It should all be
Right,
common sense, but it all gets lost because there's so much marketing out there.
right. We tell people the same thing. Sometimes I tell folks, if you could just set up a tent in the produce section of your grocery store and just kind of reach out and grab things and eat those things,
Yeah,
you'd probably do pretty well.
true.
We say, if you want to buy something and you want to eat it, it should be one item: broccoli, carrots, onion, banana, something like that.
Absolutely.
And you'll be so much happier, so much healthier, you'll have so much more energy, everything will work better. Just as a beginning, as one of the pillars that we focus on. So overall, would you say that's the one thing about healthcare that most people don't know about and they should? What is there one thing? What do you think?
About you mean in health about health in general or about healthcare, the
Uh,
system?
let's let's say healthcare.
Healthcare.
Yes,
Yeah,
something.
I think that people should realize that the system is incentivized to keep them sick. As the saying goes, "A
Mm,
cut a patient cured is a customer lost. So you should
Mm.
absolutely, if you're in the United States, I mean, I'm the first person as a doctor. I do anything possible to stay away from the healthcare system. I do not trust it. I think huge segments of it are a complete
Right.
and utter scam. I've talked about this regularly, and we should call it out. It is there to
Mm.
simply make money. So have
Mm.
skepticism about everything that you're being
Right.
told. Obviously, if you're in an emergency situation, you don't have much leeway. You kind of have to go with what you're given because you might
Mm.
be in that sort of catastrophic acute situation. But
Mm.
yeah, with other things, be careful, get second opinions and know that they
Mm.
don't make money if you're well.
So we want people to be well. If you had to
Yeah.
define true well-being in one sentence, what would that be?
True well-being would be a
Mm.
state of physical and mental wellness combined,
Mm.
ideally free of prescription medications. I know a lot of people don't have that choice. They have to take
Mm.
prescriptions, especially as they get older. But I would
Mm.
simply say it's a state of true physical and mental wellness. And I say that because
Mm.
often we forget the mental aspect of it. And we can
Mm.
talk scientifically about what that means: optimal mitochondrial function, low
Mm.
oxidative stress. You want to be insulin sensitive. These are all scientific terms, but
Mm.
you want to optimize your body in every way possible. The physical body is intrinsically linked to the mind to be in a state which is as uninflamed as possible. So
Mm.
have it in your head with everything you do. I often define it in a different way because I talk about insulin resistance, but I think people
Mhm.
can more easily picture inflammation. You know what inflammation is. And the
Mm.
chances are you have a pain anywhere, if your gut isn't working properly, if you're feeling very anxious, all of that is a state of inflammation. And
Mm.
there are always invariably lots of natural things you can do to be uninflamed, if I can put it that way.
Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to the Daily Apple Clinic podcast, The Truth About Health. Please click the share link and make our content available to friends and family. And don't forget to click the subscribe button so you'll get new episodes delivered directly to you as soon as we release them. As always, your comments are welcome. Please do your best to be kind and include ideas that will help everyone as they think about their health. You can always find us through our website, www.dailyappledpc.com. Give us a call anytime if we can answer questions or be of assistance. Here's a short clip to give you a taste of what's in store on next week's podcast.
The number one habit by far is making the majority of what you eat real food, because currently in the United States, over 70% of all calorie intake is processed food. That is by far the number one change you can make, which will have a massive difference on your physical and mental health and levels of inflammation.
Take good care and see you next week.